Let's see. I think I should be coming on pretty soon. Okay. So recently, I noticed that there seems to be a lot of confusion and a lot of misunderstanding regarding copyright on YouTube. And I know that not everyone's a lawyer. I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I am not a lawyer. I am not lawyer. You're a lawyer. But I think that because of my job in accounting, that does deal a lot with law, but not the same kind of law that happens with YouTube. I have a bit of an understanding, I think, of how lawyers think about things and how the law kind of works. So to me, like when I read about copyright law, like, there's principles that kind of make sense with what I would expect. But it seems to me that, anytime I'm seeing things about YouTube Content ID or the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, DMCA strikes or anything like that, that there's just a lot of misunderstanding about copyright. So I wanted to kind of discuss a few things. And what I really wanted to do is I wanted to solicit feedback, in particular from any YouTube cover musician. Although, really, I think that I could also get feedback from anyone who has dealt with YouTube Content ID. But I know that there's different things going on for musicians in particular. Now, my channel is mostly video game music covers, but I want to get as much feedback as possible from cover musicians of all sorts of musicians, because I suspect that video game cover musicians are going to have a very different experience with Content ID than other types of musicians. So, for example, I think that people who do more mainstream music, kind of like what you'd hear on the radio. I mean, I say mainstream, but I really mean anything that you'd hear on the radio in a conventional setting. That's going to be usually more enforced in YouTube's Content ID program than video game music, which is like never in Content ID. But I wanted to kind of talk about that. So if you know people who do covers of music, and it's not just YouTube, definitely try to get them in on this live stream. Let me just go ahead on my Twitter and tweet out that this is happening. I was gonna make like a forum for this, but then I got really lazy with doing that. Let's see, discussing copyright and content ID for cover musicians on YouTube Live. And let me tweet that out. Okay, so let me just actually go through first and see people who are already in here. I already have two people. Hey, Piano Pekka, copyright, sad face, hate that from Nintendo. So Nintendo actually is probably one of the few video game like companies who really cares about copyright. So yeah, I definitely expect that uh, people that have more problems with Nintendo, but even for covers of Nintendo music, like there's usually not a lot going on. So uh I just feel like music composers in the video game world aren't really as on it as a lot of other uh copyright holders. So, I don't want this to be a kind of a call out session, because I really want to find out what people think and be able to provide that information. Like when I started, I did not know anything about any of this, so I understand that it can be tough. But what kind of motivated this conversation was, I saw this tweet in my you should check this out kind of thing. And yeah, as a musician, I totally understand. It's a person, the Ishtar, I think that's how you pronounce it. I don't know. Uh, saying effing copyright because he got a content ID claim. And based off of this Shingeki no Kyojin, like it looks like it's for, maybe like this person does anime piano covers. And it looks like it's for like Attack on Titan, I guess. And so, you know, it says monetized by copyright owner. I don't see if there's anything here about whether this particular cover allowed for revenue sharing. That's definitely something I want to know, by the way. If you've gotten a content ID claim, and I wanna know, like, was there the option to share revenue? Was there not the option? Because at least theoretically, copyright owners of music should be able to offer that ability. I'm not saying that everyone's doing it, but I just wanna get everyone's understanding. Well, anyway, this person definitely saw this as a negative thing, and so, I asked, "Do you have the option to share revenue as a cover?" And I'm gonna get into this covers aren't really fair use thing because, later on in the comments, there are some suggestions that I just wasn't really liking. So, for example, this person says, "You can contest it because it's a cover you did, should be good under fair use. I contested some copyrighted Osu songs." So, I mean, my issue with this is if you understand copyright, and copyright's very complicated, but I'll just explain this. As soon as a work gets fixed into a tangible form, it is copyrighted. So the issue is that the song, like the series of like chords and melodies and all that kind of stuff, that it gets its own copyright, the composition copyright. And then the recording done by whoever the original band was or whoever the original musician, that gets a separate recording copyright. So you have this composition copyright and you have this recording copyright. If you perform a cover of a song, then you are still relying upon that composition. Even though you may have done all the parts on your own, you're not necessarily using that recording copyright, but you're still relying on that composition copyright. And if we see here in YouTube, they do differentiate. If you have a musical composition content ID claim, it will say music composition. Whereas if it's the recording itself, it will say audio recording. So um, the issue with I think filing a dispute on things like this is they know that it is the composition. Like there are definitely false claims. I mean, I definitely think that if people want to share their experiences with bad content ID claims and with false claims, um, I would love to hear that too. But if the claim is legitimate and it's from the people who actually own the copyright and it's a cover, I just don't think it's safe or smart to contest it because yes, you did use that uh, arrangement, and so the copyright owner for that arrangement is entitled for revenue for that. But I think that there should be more copyright owners who are into revenue sharing, and so that's why I really want to hear what people's thoughts are on that. Is because this is something that the copyright owner can decide whether they want to share revenue or they can decide not to. So maybe what's happening is that these people are monetized, taking the monetization, but they're not even offering to share revenue. If you are a musician who regularly licenses your music for sale on iTunes, Google Play, uh, all these different services, Spotify, then you should be aware if you're working with folks like Louder or Sounddrop or any of the other services. I just picked those 2 because I'm in video game music, but I know that different service providers would do things for other, genres. Um, if you can hear that whining dog, I'm so sorry. Like, it's 10 p.m. here, and it whines pretty much every night. Whatever. Um, Back to where I was. If you've licensed for one of those services, then you should be aware that there is a licensing fee to be able to sell your music, online, like something like 9.1 cents per song, and if your song is over 5 minutes, then, that math changes a bit. That's because in America, what we have is this compulsory licensing scheme, whereby as long as that music has been published in some sort of commercial form in the United States, then if you're willing to pay the, uh composer in the studio the money, the mandatory royalty, they can't deny that. As long as you're willing to pay the royalty, you can do the cover and you can offer it for sales. Technically, you are supposed to pay that royalty per download, per listen, however it is, anytime you release a song. So even if you offer it for free, it's supposed to, pay that royalty. Um, Not everyone does this, obviously. Obviously, people offer free downloads of stuff. I mean, I definitely have, uh, been participating in albums and things like that that have been offered for free, but ideally, there would be licensing and there would be that sort of thing. Um, the issue is that compulsory license, that mechanical license only applies to the audio itself. So it only applies to say you are recording based off of this composition, you've recorded all the parts yourself and you are releasing it as an audio file. So that's, MP3 or something like that. As soon as you say I want to put this audio and this video together, which that's what you're basically doing with YouTube, you need something else. You need something called a synchronization license or a sync license. Unfortunately, there is no mandatory compulsory licensing scheme where there's a set federal rate, and if you pay that amount, then you are good to go. What sync licenses, that's up to that's up to whatever the copyright owner wants to agree to. And so if they are not okay with, music videos, they can just say, "Nope, we don't approve of this. We're taking it offline." The thing that YouTube has done with Content ID is that they've essentially negotiated with all of these content creators, and it's not every copyright owner. That's why I suspect that not everyone has Content ID claims for everything. But what they've done is they've negotiated that part of the AdSense revenue can go to these various copyright holders. So in a way, it's kind of like paying the sync license to the copyright owner. And with what they've done for at least a couple of years is that they have let me turn off my phone volume right here. What they've done for a couple of like, I don't know when it was released. It was a few years ago, but they've allowed revenue sharing so that when the copyright owner claims the song, there's a checkbox that they can enable, and if you click that checkbox, you say this is a valid cover, and when it's a valid cover, you can share revenue. So it's pretty much like the licensing situation where some of the money goes to the copyright owner, some of the money goes to you, everyone's happy. I don't think that copyright owners want to take things down. I think they just want to be fairly compensated, which we could do an entire podcast episode about fairly compensating people. Like, you can't just say it's for exposure. Like, that's not really how it works. But going through the Ishtar, effing copyright, monetized by copyright owner. There's all these claims. If you see something that says, something dash CS, then that typically means it's a collection society, and there are different collection societies for different countries. So this, to me, I don't know what all of these acronyms mean off the top of my head, but whenever I see underscore CS and I see multiple content owners, which usually means there's other collection societies, I usually think that that means that's legit. Now, I don't know who specifically owns the rights to the songs for Attack on Titan. So that's, one thing where maybe that's still a false claim, but that would seem to be like, this is a legit situation. Maybe there's revenue sharing enabled. But, people are saying you should contest this. One person says Japanese companies are pretty strict about their stuff. Unfortunately, that is true. So everything I mentioned about compulsory licensing for mechanical, just the audio, that's only true if it's released commercially in America. Copyright law is very different in other countries. So, for example, one thing that copyright law has in other countries is something called moral rights, where the copyright owner can say, regardless of whether you're willing to pay them the money, they can say, nope, we don't like the purpose that you're using this for, therefore we refuse to sell it to you. So it's kind of like every time you see a musician complaining about a politician using their song as part of their like campaign, and they complain, oh, why, I don't agree with this politician's policies. Well, the reason that the politicians can do that in America is because there's this mechanical licensing. As long as their campaign is willing to pay whatever the licensing, the musician really has no say in it. Where in other countries, they definitely do have a say. So they can say, well, I don't agree with this message, so I'm not going to sell it to you. Now, there are some exceptions to that, like, and I don't really want to go into that, but generally speaking, the US system does not have moral rights. Moral rights also say that you can have a say on how you will be attributed, or if you will even be attributed at all. Whereas in America, as long as they've paid that 9.1 cents per song or whatever, they don't have to do anything. They don't have to say who this song was by. They don't have to attribute. And there's a thing where people think that if you just attribute the song, then you're okay with copyright. And it's really not about attribution. In America, it's about paying them that money, that 9.1 cents. And again, that's just the mechanical. That's just the sound. So when you sync it, there's no compulsory, but it's in America, it's still about, compensating. So offering it for free, not selling it for money, those things don't really clear up the copyright hurdle. And there's things like fair use, but that could be a completely different topic. I'm going to kind of look through my dashboard to see, holy smokes, there's lots of comments now. So let me just kind of read through here. Jackson Parodi, the live stream on Twitch master. Uh, yeah. So, what's with the effing copyright comment? If they did cover that composition, then it's in the right. Yes, I mean the copyright owner definitely has a right to claim money on a cover. Like there's actually a long-standing debate over whether covers can be fair use or not, and eventually there will be some sort of video debate that I'll do with some other person on that. But I'm of the opinion that covers are like never fair use, so whatever. Um, let's see. So yeah, just reading through these comments, there's a series of comments in here, saying uh does the copyright owner have the right to claim monetization, all that kind of stuff? And it's like, yes, generally the copyright owner does have the right to claim that monetization. You are using their copyright. Like that is, if you want to have full ownership of your work, then covers probably aren't the space you're going to want to be in because you need to be licensing. That is the legal kind of requirement. But I would suspect that there are still situations where YouTube is allowing revenue to be shared, and I still want that feedback from you guys on that if you're seeing that. Yes, people also put these disclaimers like no copyright infringement intended and whatnot, and that doesn't do anything either. Like just because you put a disclaimer doesn't mean that it's like people who use Facebook and they're worried about their privacy, so they put these things like Facebook does not have the permission to. No, as soon as you post something in a status, Facebook can pretty much do whatever they want on this. Um, so I'm gonna let those go. I'm gonna kind of go through a few more of these comments on here because there are a few others that I wanted to talk about. People are just so outraged. So my bullcrap meter is going crazy. Uh, Wait, you can get strike for contest. Even Goose House do cover, and they don't have strike contested. So here's another thing. So a strike is different than a content ID claim. People think that content ID claims are bad. Content ID claims are not bad. Content ID claims, if they are from the legitimate person, and I'm going to get there soon, if they're from the legitimate person, are a way of you knowing that your cover is legitimate. So you are now licensing that use of that composition from the proper copyright owner. That is the ideal case scenario versus a strike. A strike means your video has been requested to be taken down and your account is not in good standing. 3 strikes and you are out on YouTube. So that's not a good thing. If you contest a content ID claim, which is a good thing, right? As long as it's legit and it's not from a fake person or, it's a mismatch. Then if that copyright owner sees that you made this frivolous dispute, then they can either reassert that claim or then they can escalate it to a strike and a takedown notice. So that's why I think it's really risky to recommend people to contest things. Like if he actually did that song and it was a cover, like it's not a question. So let's just but I don't want to like call these people out necessarily. It's just this is the state of information. Like people don't understand these things. So that's why I kind of want to understand, like, ask all your friends who do covers, like, what's their understanding of copyright and the rules relating to this? Let's see. So then there was another one. Yeah, you did a great job. Your way and fair use. Like people don't have this good understanding of fair use. Like fair use, first of all, fair use is something that has to be determined in a court of law. So unless you're willing to go to court, you probably can't rely on fair use. I'm sorry. Like, even if you're in the right on fair use, you only know you're in the right when a judge says you're in fair use. So, unless you have the money and the time and the energy to risk that, and then your channel gets a strike, and then you appeal it, you do a counter notification or whatever, and then you take them to court or whatever. I mean, like seriously, it's yeah. So the one thing I will say, this person says Cashwell, nice name. Like there is an issue I think where the copyright owner for a lot of these pieces is hidden behind whatever their organization is. So if you know that it's like Sony or Universal or whatever, then you can kind of figure out that, oh yeah, this musician is in that label or whatever. So that makes sense. But a lot of times it's a lot of acronyms, it's a lot of abbreviations that you may not know. Like I think a lot of people think that CS is just BS, right? Whereas CS is really Collection Society, and generally it's legit. Now, of course, a CS could be representing someone who doesn't really own the material, so that's something. But um, here's another person who's confused about what that notice means. They said, "Did they DMCA your cover?" No, this is the content ID claim, so it's monetized by copyright owner. If you get a DMCA notice, your video gets taken down, and that's very different. This is your video still up as long as you're okay with it. We're just going to take the money. I'm thinking that in a lot of cases, let me know in the comments. This is going to be archived, so you can keep on commenting after it's archived. Let me know, do you get the option to share revenue when you get content ID claims? Like that, I think should be the way to go. But again, that's something that the copyright owner can decide. What the F? That's just a cover. Why do they have to copyright it? So I just think that there's just a lot of misunderstanding about what copyright involves. So let's see. I didn't want to actually go to his Patreon. Nope. So the first thing I wanted to say is that and this is why I wanted to cover music decisions of all different varieties, because you're going to see like this is YouTube's music policies. Definitely check there if you're thinking about doing a cover. It does not include all music. It does not include all copyrighted content. So you can't assume that just because it's not in music policies that it's not copyrighted. I see a lot of people making that mistake. Again, as soon as something is put into a tangible medium, it is copyrighted. So even when a cover artist does a cover, they have a copyright on the parts that they change, which usually involve the recording. So someone can't take your cover and just decide to use it saying, well, you didn't own the copyright on the composition. Yeah, you don't own the cover copyright on the composition, but you do own that specific recording. But you likely are not in music policies. You likely do not have official copyright registration. So from a paper perspective, it may not look like you have copyright, but you do. It accrues as soon as you put the notes on the page, as soon as you put that music and you record it, whatever it may be. But what they've done with this music policy is that whenever they've gotten these various groups to kind of say their policies of what would they do if they were in Content ID, they kind of put this in this database. So you can kind of see that if you use Castle on the Hill, this is, I guess, a popular bloke over in jolly old England or whichever. I mean, I don't know. He's probably not even from England. He's probably from one of those other countries in the UK. And now, like, all of his fans are going to be like, "Oh my gosh, you don't even know geography or something." Whatever. But what it says is, if you use this song, it's viewable worldwide, but you can't monetize your video. What this means is that the copyright owner is going to monetize it and take it over for you. But it says if you perform a cover, it's viewable worldwide and it's eligible for revenue sharing. So this is what I see on a lot of pieces in this music policies. And that's why I would expect that if you get a content ID claim, you should be able to see this, and you should probably see that revenue sharing is available. So that's why I kind of want your experience. Have you gotten content ID claims? For what kind of songs were they for? Did you notice whether they seemed legitimate or were they like completely fake? Did you contest it if it was fake, and how did that work? And then were you able to share revenue on this? So now I'm definitely gonna point to some other things. So if you look at someone like Prince, Prince is like, dang it, and it's not perfect at searching things because it will find like anywhere Prince is mentioned, and sometimes things where it's not mentioned, it will find that there. Um, and you can't search necessarily very easily by the combination of uh, the name and the artist. So it's like you're stuck with either doing the artist or the name. So this isn't good. Prince. Wow, Prince's pieces are actually seem to be something must have happened, because it used to be that all of Prince's entries would be like, you cannot use this video, you cannot use this on YouTube whatsoever, that you will get shut down. Like, but now it's like you can share revenue, you know, that sort of thing. So someone must have done some negotiating here, because that's very different than what I would have expected. I'm trying to find one that I know it's like you cannot use this at all, but I guess I mean, Prince was used to be my go-to guy. But here's what will happen. If you say, like, for example, I'm gonna do a Chrono Trigger piece, right? So let me look for anything that has Chrono Trigger. And it's going to say, well, first of all, it's gonna say a bunch of, like, what is this nonsense, right? And then it's gonna say stuff like Video Games Live, Chrono Trigger, and Chrono Cross medley. So here's what I'd say. Notice how you don't see any Yasunori Mitsuda, or you don't see any like Square, you don't see anything like that in here. You see, I'm guessing these are covers, right? And then you see other stuff like this. So if you get a match for a video game song, it's probably not legit. It's probably not, because you weren't basing it off of Video Game Live's cover of it. You were basing it off of the original. So that's one area where I'd say, like, try to talk to them or whatever. But you will notice there's like no actual way to share revenue or to get a content ID claim from the actual people who own this. Let me just look at this. Yes, Mitsuda. Nope, not found. Squaresoft. Nope, not found. So this is a kind of an issue where video games generally aren't in the system now. There are some like newer games that sometimes have stuff in there, or if a game licensed a song that already existed, like, Grand Theft Auto has like songs that are actually like real songs that they just put in the game, then those might be in here. But generally, video games aren't in the Content ID system. So generally, I don't see a lot of claims on video game music. And the ones that I've seen are generally not legit. Let me go through the live dashboard so I can see. I have 7 people. 7 people now. Wow. Wowie, wowie, wow. Let's see. So Jackson says fair use isn't a go-to last resort excuse. There are legitimate fair use concerns, but crappy I'm trying to not be demonetized here, guys. Crappy accordion covers of VGM ain't it. So there's a big legal debate over whether fair use is an affirmative right or whether it's like a affirmative defense. And the idea of like a right is that you should be able to assert fair use before you even get to a court. And then affirmative defense is like, once you're in a court, you go to the judge and you say, well, I'm not actually infringing because of fair use, right? And then the court decides. So the problem is the way that the copyright system works, it's very favorable on copyright owners and typically very favorable on copyright owner with lots of money. It's like you're guilty until you're proven innocent. So whether you have fair use or not, you still are kind of not going to really know about that until you go to court. So I would absolutely not rely on it. Does copyright affect views? So there is an argument that monetization can affect your views. Like if people see that there are ads on your videos, then they'll click away and they won't watch them. And so that you shouldn't put ads on your videos. And then if you get a content ID claim that puts ads on your videos, then that can affect things. But I don't really think that that's necessarily a big thing. Let's see. Jackson writes, these people characterize the collection agencies and copyright holders as evil billionaire corporations that want to shut down the little man. But the fact is that if any small-time songwriter had their song covered by a big-name artist, then they would be clamoring for licensing. Yeah, absolutely. Like if it's because like we are kind of like flipping the relationship where a lot of the people who are complaining are the people who are like the smaller guy and they're trying to get a big guy, that sort of thing. But if we're flipped, like, and that person got like fabulously wealthy off of your song, like you definitely want to be protected. Hey, Alex, thanks for joining. About 80% of my promos get demonetized for copyright strikes. Okay, so let me kind of now my sense is tingling. So your promos do not get copyright strikes because they are still up on YouTube. But I totally agree that they probably get the revenue is probably going to the copyright owner. And that's because if we go back to these music policy, like those aren't even covers. So like if I go back to whatever it says, if you use the actual song, right, it's usually going to say you can't monetize your video because the copyright owner is going to monetize it. So that's something I would expect. Um, let's see, let's see, let's see, let's see. Let's see. So Insane in the Rain music says, I'm a little man. I don't want to get shut down. We have determined from a previous stream that Insane in the Rain's dad works for Nintendo, so he can license Nintendo songs that weren't released in America. Pajama Pants Music, the worldwide famous pants opera singer. Thanks for joining. Thanks for joining. Let's see. So I don't want to imply that video game isn't real music. It's just that their composers don't really care that much about content ID and copyright, and other people do. Carlos says that he hasn't received a claim or content ID claim in years, and that's what I would expect. I would expect that people doing video game music probably aren't getting a lot of claims. So that's why I really also want to hear about if you've done any claims on non-video game music. Then I want to hear that. Yes, opera pants roll is a joke, but she could do it. So I want to get into something else. So if you can look in through your video manager here. If you have TubeBuddy, you go to TubeBuddy, my videos. If you have not TubeBuddy, you can go through name and then Creator Studio and then videos, right? And so what this is going to do is there's going to be a copyright notices, and that's going to say whenever you have a content ID claim. And I'm just going to kind of go through here so you can see that I kind of monetize everything because I do what I want. And I'll just let you guys know, ever since the new advertiser thing that's been going around where apparently advertisers don't like their ads being placed against controversial content, there's been a wave of demonetization. So just go ahead and check your videos to see if anything has been demonetized. I'm sure that you all have wholesome content, so I'm sure that this hasn't happened. But I'm just going to say, like, notice how I have this full green icon everywhere except for when you get down to here. And so you're seeing a lot of video game music, and it's only when you get to this Grand Theft Auto 5 Churches, which Churches is mainstream, I guess. I mean, I don't know, like they're the indie of mainstream. I don't know, like, are they mainstream now? And so what it says is sharing revenue includes copyright content. So I can come into this includes copyright content, and it's going to take me over to my video copyright notice, and it's going to say something very similar to what the Ishtar's picture said. It's going to show that it's a music composition, recover. It's going to say play the match. It's the entire song. Don't worry. It's going to say UMPG Publishing. Okay. Universal Music. Okay. Whatever. Great. And it's, this doesn't have any collection societies, but it, kind of has that. It says monetized by copyright owner, but I am sharing ads revenue from the ads. Since I've already clicked this button to share revenue, I don't know where that button would be, but I would challenge you to see if there's a button saying something like, if this is a valid cover, is this a valid cover? And then check that box and you should be able to be good to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back to this videos and show you that over, 4 pages of videos, there's not going to be a lot of this half circle sort of thing because most of these are video game music and they're not in content ID. And so nothing really happens to them, right? I can monetize them. No one knows anything, right? So seems like it's good for me, but what it really means is that I have exposure. Because if a song isn't in content ID and the copyright owner manually finds that it's there, they can say, hey, this is copyright infringement, and they can do a takedown notice. I don't think that takedown notices really help anyone because that means I'm not making money, I'm not happy, they're not making money, they're not happy. Whereas with content ID, I'm making some money and my video is still getting views. They're making some money and they didn't have to do anything. So I think that that's the best option. But I mean, everyone doesn't see eye to eye on that. So I'm going to kind of just keep on going through. I have a few that I didn't monetize because I want you guys to see my trailer without, seeing an ad first or whatever. I'm going to just jump quickly because if you come to these in my videos, if you come to copyright notices, that'll take you right to the ones where it's not just a, very obvious full green. So you can see the 3 ones that I'm sharing revenue from, they're all conventional songs. I don't know. I guess, Crystal Castle's like, are they still indie? Like, are they mainstream now? I don't know. Metronomy, and then of course Churches. So on each of these, as soon as I got the content ID claim, I was able to say this is a valid cover. You're good. And then here's, like, my very first YouTube video of all time. I put it on private because it's for a class project, and as soon as I, like, published it, it got a bunch of foot fetish comments, and that's why it had 5,000. Until I did Undertale, this was my most viewed video because of foot fetishes. So I took that down because I just couldn't couldn't have it. Anyways, this song is not eligible for monetization because it uses Toxic by Britney Spears. It's not a cover, it's just the actual clips. And, I can understand that is definitely um, copyrighted. It's not a composition, it is sound recording. So, see this? It's different. It says sound recording. So, I would definitely say when you get a content ID claim, does it say music composition or does it say sound recording? I would say if it's a sound recording, that's probably not right because as long as you're not using any samples or any uh, backing tracks or anything from the original, it's all of your sound recordings, not theirs. So, I would expect that. So this says SEME, Sony Music, on behalf of etc. Italy. So I'm hoping that Britney Spears has something in Italy or something like that because I would hate to file a dispute on this and get a copyright strike because I want to support Britney. I want to support Britney. So I'm just going to come back here and show you one thing about CCS's collection societies. If you come to something like this one here, Crystal Castles, I think will probably be a better one. You will see Untrust as musical composition, so it's not the sound recording, it's all sax all the time. But you'll see that Warner, Universal, and then a bunch of collection societies. And if you search for collection society and this acronym, you'll find out where they're from. Like I think Compass is composers, performers, and artists of Singapore, something like that, right? But you would never know just from reading it. So I'm gonna go back to my live dashboard so I can see a few things. So everyone has been very excited. Uh Pajama Pants said, I got one claim which was quite obviously illegitimate. I filed a report and they failed to. So that's what usually happens. What usually happens is that if there's a legitimate claim, it's just someone, content ID is automatic. So it makes mistakes, one, and then there are people who do really bad things that shouldn't be done, but it's all automatic. So when you file a dispute, they know it's not real. They know it's not real. They're just hoping that people won't dispute because they'll be afraid. And so when you file a dispute, there's like a month-long wait where that money that's been earned goes into a kind of like a limbo, and whoever wins the dispute gets the pot of ad revenue. So definitely, as soon as you get content ID claim, check whether you need to share revenue, whether you need to dispute, or whether you need to say, hey, that's legit. Because when they claim it and it's not disputed, that money goes to the other side. When they claim it and it's disputed, it goes into that, pot that goes to whoever wins. I guess they call that escrow in legalese, but whatever. And if it's, disputed and you lose, and it goes with them. Yeah, so I'm not going to say that they always fail. Some people are more adamant than others about doing things like that, but it sometimes fails. I'd be really interested if a VGM cover was demonetized according to the new advertising friendly content rules. I'm 100% sure that this is going to happen to Jackson when he says, "Can I write off exposure on my return?" He's had some exposure on some of his videos, and I'm sure that YouTube is going to wise up to his game. If someone gives you a 1099 with exposure written on it, I have to say that according to the Internal Revenue Code, all income from what's ever source derived is taxable unless there's a specific provision against it. And unfortunately, there is no tax code section saying that you don't have to pay taxes on exposure. Now, what is your taxable basis in exposure? That's a very interesting question, but we'll do at another time. Oh, thanks for joining, Alex. I'm definitely going to be paying attention to the promos. There's plots building. Insane in the Rain says Undertale surpasses foot fetishes. Wow. So if I had left the foot fetish video up, I don't know if Undertale would have surpassed it. I'm sure that I would have kept on getting regular foot fetish traffic and regular foot fetish comments, and you know that's a possibility. Um, for my video on Cinnabar Island where I put on socks, I should have put that as the thumbnail so that I could have gotten more foot fetish traffic, but I decided against that. I didn't want that. I didn't want that crowd. Uh, Covered Toxic and collab with Jack. That's a great pun. Uh, Sponsored by Gold Bond foot powder. We need to see your feet. You can definitely see my foot in my Cinnabar Island cover, and I put on like Zitai Ryoiki socks that are like, grade at least B, maybe A. Like it's like legit. Like just put some, schoolgirl skirts, and it would be like perfect. Crystal Castles hasn't been indie since 2004. Then that explains it. That's why I got content ID match, because they're not indie anymore, right? There was another video that I did very recently. Well, not very recently, but it was recent-ish that I expected to get a content ID claim and it didn't. So let me just see if I can find that. And then you can tell me if they're indie or not. Let me see. Oh, Kate Bush, not in content ID apparently. So she's not. Well, I guess she is indie, huh? But let me just keep on going. Where was that song? And of course, the internet gets really slow when I'm live streaming, so everyone can see that everything just takes so long to load. I'm trying to remember what that song was. Yeah, Kate Bush, apparently not in content ID. Actually, let me just check this out. Could be honeycomb in a sea of honey. So a lot of Kate Bush is in content ID. So for example, if I wanted to do Wuthering Heights, you don't want to hear me try to sing that. So I'm not even gonna go there. But if I did perform a cover of Wuthering Heights, that probably would be picked up in content ID, and I would be able to share that revenue. But Sunset, it looks like I don't want to go through all of these honestly, but let me see if I could do that. See, and it's probably going to say no results because Act 3 Sunset Live. Okay. Wow. Now this is fun. If you use the actual song from their live, you will be blocked in 238 countries. Now, I don't know how many let me just ask. How many countries are there in the world? There are 196 countries in the world today. And that is including Taiwan, which is not considered an official country by many. And yet, if you use this song, like the actual recording, you will be blocked in 238 countries. So that is serious business. But if you perform a cover, meaning you don't use any of the actual recording, you've done all the parts yourself, that's viewable worldwide and you're eligible for revenue sharing. So content ID really shouldn't be a bad thing because I mean, I just went through a few entries and it had that. It had if you use the song, you can't monetize your video, maybe blocked, usually viewable worldwide, but you can't monetize your video. If you perform a cover, on most of these that I've seen, it says eligible for revenue sharing. So I just I think in an ideal world, every video game musician, every composer will be in content ID so that we can be confident that we're okay with the law and that we are compensating everyone fairly. And it wouldn't cost us $10 per every cover. But we can only dream, can we? So let me just read a few more comments. What about a foot fetish video with epic prog song in the background? I would need to learn how to arrange prog songs. Sailor skirts, I could do it, but I would need sailor skirts. Kawaii skirts, yes. Okay, so what I wanted to talk about now, I think it looks like I just have video game people, so I can't really. I asked a question on Twitter and I actually want to get feedback from more people than just video game cover musicians. And what I asked on Twitter is, oh man, now it's showing everything. Okay, I want to do a survey of cover musicians, not just video game cover musicians, to see how common content ID matches are and what people think about them. Because I want to see if most people have the same understanding that I do, that content ID matches are good. They're where legitimizing your cover. I suspect that most people do not think very highly of content ID. They don't realize that it's actually a good thing. And I also suspect that a lot of people have mostly bad experiences with content ID because they have bad claims. So, for example, with me, all of my claims have been, they're legit claims, and I've been able to share revenue. So I have very good experience with that. But what I've seen is, like Toxidential says, it's not even a legitimate business and auto claims to steal money. So they sent the counterclaim, and hopefully he'll find out on April 7th that, it expires. Drascon has never had one. Christian Richardson has had 3, and so I asked, "Well, did you share revenue?" And he's like, "I don't monetize, so I don't know." So I'm like, "Whatever." Uh, there was, again, another one who said, someone who has no right to the song, so that's able to successfully dispute it. And then, Anime Vivi actually points out something interesting. The J-pop ones have been claimed, and, like, video game anime stuff typically is not. So this is another thing I would say. I would say conventional, kind of what you would hear on the radio kind of music, those music composers and their associated labels and whatnot are usually gonna be in content ID, and so they're usually gonna have legitimate claims. But other ones, like anime, video games, I would expect, unless it's like an anime song that's J-pop, like he said, I would expect that I wouldn't see anything. Um so that is what I would expect. Hey, Piano Game Night. This stream, like all streams, is going to be archived, so you can see it from the beginning and hear everything that you missed. I just kind of talked about how in the beginning I talked about there is copyright associated with doing covers, and you are also using someone else's copyright. So you can't just say, "Well, it's my own original work and I changed things and it's fair use, blah 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 blah." Like, no, you didn't invent the composition. And the fact that you're naming that song after the original composition probably is a suggestion that you aren't transforming enough to be fair use. That's my thought. I know other people have disagreements. There'll probably be a video argument or debate or something about that. Let me see. So we also discussed that you can get blocked in more countries than exist. That's kind of like your video gets sent to the shadow realm, kind of like all the real countries couldn't even take it. So you got blocked in the shadow realm. What else did I want to talk about? So I kind of talked about how most of my videos are monetized, but very few of them have content ID claims. I don't understand people who complain about this, but I do see this a lot. I see a lot of people having complaints on this. Um, so, don't want to go into my emails quite yet. I was gonna do a form, like a Google form, but then I got into like, what kind of music do you cover? And I was doing a multiple choice, and it was like, huh, there are a lot of genres, and so I just stopped that. Maybe I'll put a link in the description later, but I don't think I'm gonna finish that. Um, I'm gonna have to definitely make it so that I change, like, vary up the live stream time. So, like, some it's gonna be in the morning for some people, it'll be in a different time zone for other people, that sort of thing. What I wanted to talk about now, I guess, are this is actually kind of important because if you see in this music policies how it has a if you use this song or if you perform a cover, we then have to understand what is a valid cover versus what counts as using this song. And this gets into the whole debate over what is a cover versus what is a remix, and are those the same thing? Are they just synonyms or whatnot? So, as I kind of mentioned before, there are two main copyrights associated with a piece of music. There is the composition, which is like the series of like, notes that make up like the melody or the harmony or the chords, like what makes the song sound like the song, regardless of whatever instruments played. And then there's the specific recording by a specific group of people at a specific time. So the former is the composition copyright, and the latter is kind of the master recording copyright. And so what it's saying for a cover is if you are not using that audio recording, that sound recording, that master recording copyright, but you are using that composition copyright because it does sound like the song. You're using the melody, you're using the harmony, you're using chords. You may have reharmonized, but it's still basically that song. That's what counts as a valid cover. If you sample, you use parts from the original recording by the original band. For example, if you use like karaoke tracks or you use a backing track or something like that, or you dual mix or whatever is popular these days, that does not count as a valid cover because that counts as using the song, which depending on the criteria, you could get your video blocked in 238 countries when we've discussed there are only 196 countries on the planet. So there's an issue where people try to get around this by doing like really weird stuff. So for example, in general, the difference between a cover and a remix is a remix samples. So a remix falls into, this, blocked in 238 countries category, whereas a cover, you're performing all the parts yourself and so you fall into this eligible for revenue sharing. There actually used to be, and there probably still is, a louder FAQ, frequently asked question on this. And so I really love the way that they explained it because they kind of talked about all these different things. They say a cover song is a new performance or recording of a song that was previously written, recorded, and released by someone else. You own the recording, but someone else owns the song itself, the lyrics, melody, and song structure. And then later on, they mention a lot of other things. So they say samples and remixes. A sample is a recording. A sample of a recording is a piece of recording that has been spliced into a new track. So it's someone else's recording and you put it into your track. A remix is a recording from beginning to end that has been edited to make a track that sounds different from the original, but it still uses that same full track, same voice, same stem, whatever, but you're like making it into a different style. So when you do a sample or a remix, that doesn't get into the same boat as a cover. You can't just rely on the composition copyright. You can't just rely on a sync license with that kind of compulsory, sorry, not a sync license. You can't rely on that mechanical license with that compulsory scheme. You have to, like with a sync license, you have to go to them and say, is it okay if I use this recording? So additionally, you have to go to the person who owns the recording copyright because you're using the actual sound files. And so they, of course, have the exclusive right to grant or deny permission to anyone who wishes to use that. Whereas with that mechanical compulsory, as long as you're willing to pay that 9.1 cents, they can't really say anything about that. So you'll see that, Louder, Sounddrop, etc. They do not handle licensing for samples and remixes because it's not that compulsory mechanical. It's something where the copyright owner could say at any time, no. This kind of leads me into something where, I see this thing called Nightcore, which is like, you take a full song that exists and you just put the pitch up and people think that that's fair use. And it's not. It's clearly not fair use. It's not even a cover. It is a remix. And so therefore it is infringing on both the composition and the audio recording copyright. But I just think, this leads me to suspect that there's just not as much information or awareness about what copyright entails because people will go up and down on all of these forums and all these threads saying, why did my Nightcore remix get copyright claimed? I'm going to dispute it. And then they get upset when they get the copyright strike. And it's kind of like if you just knew that that is definitely a remix that you are violating both the composition copyright and the audio recording copyright, you could have prevented that, but people don't know about it. Piano Pega says before streaming, maybe a tweet. That way people can be aware of your streaming. Technically, I did tweet. I tweeted like 5 minutes before. And so that totally counts, right? Let me show you. This is legit. I'm actually still on there. I want to do a live stream soon on YouTube, copyright on YouTube. And then here is the link. So technically, I did it. Technically, I did it. Piano Game Night was taking a nap when he got the notification. I'm so glad that it's actually notifying. YouTube is really promoting these live streams, so if you can do a live stream, definitely do it. It's like crazy good for your channel watch time. Not so much about audience retention. So Piano Faker says I had to go to bed soon. I probably should be going to bed soon. This stream is around 1 hour. So yeah, I did tweet it around an hour ago, which was like 5 minutes, 55 minutes. I tweeted it around an hour ago, so 5 minutes before going. Probably not a lot of warning, but I'm okay with that. So unless there are any other questions, I think I'm gonna let this be archived, and then if anyone has any more questions, then I will field those. I still definitely want share this with people who do covers. Really, I don't care if they watch the whole thing. I don't care if they watch none of it. But here's what I really want. They can do Twitter. They can do on the video, whatever. I want to know, what are your thoughts on Content ID? Have you ever gotten a Content ID claim? Was it from a legitimate source? Was it a positive experience for you? If you didn't understand it, like, do what is your understanding of copyright when it comes to covers? Like, is it are you aware that you are using the other person's copyright, or is that just something that like you're hearing for the first time? Like, um, that's kind of what I want to hear, because the law is the law. So if you didn't know this, but you're learning about it for the first time, I want more people to know about it so that we can kind of have more of an informed discussion about it. But I also want people to know kind of, if they aren't looking for revenue sharing, they should check their settings again. Like, maybe you got a Content ID claim and you didn't know you could do anything about it, but you can be sharing revenue. Check that box, and hopefully that can help you out. Maybe that means we can talk to video game people and try to get them into Content ID so that our covers can be legitimate or whatnot. Probably not. I just got a copyright claim. Yeah, definitely check to see who that copyright claim is from. YouTube has had some issues with emails. So if you got a copyright claim and you weren't aware of it, there are some issues with sending emails. They're supposed to send you an email anytime there's a Content ID match, anything like that. But sometimes you just gotta check, check to see if it says musical composition. Check to see if it offers revenue sharing. I'm not saying that everything is going to offer revenue sharing. Check in music policies if you can find it, and if it says revenue sharing, then hopefully it does have revenue sharing. One thing I would say, this can change depending on what country you're in. So I looked up a song and it's like revenue sharing enabled for ballad covers. And then someone I know who lives in France looked up the same song, and in France it was like, no, like you don't get any monetization on it. So that was kind of weird. Yeah, so yeah, there's definitely, I guess, some issues where it doesn't always send the emails, and hopefully YouTube will fix that. Um, Other than that, I think that is about it. Let me see if there's anything else I wanted to talk about today. I mean, definitely send any questions or anything that you kind of want to have. Uh, Piano Game Night. Ask your question, and I will let you know if it was covered in the beginning. And if anyone else has any questions, I'll let you know if it was covered earlier in the stream, or if maybe it's something I need to do a follow up on. I can definitely do that. I am totally down to do that. Let me just check to see if maybe you didn't put your comment above with that question, and maybe I missed it. I'm not seeing your question, Piano Game Night. Welcome, seventh person. So I was saying to people, there's going to be an archive for this. So if you are just coming on, I'm about to end this actually. Don't leave. Playing songs from piano book or collection is copyright. So technically, if it depends, right? So if it's written in a piano book, that fits that one criteria. It's put in a fixed, tangible form. So that would have a copyright associated with it. But what usually happens is that they make piano books or piano collections of very old music. So if you're playing something that's like from before like 1900 or whatever, there's like a specific year, but I don't know the specific year off the top of my head. If you're playing something that's substantially pretty old, then what may happen is that song may have lapsed into the public domain, in which case the copyright has kind of lapsed. Um, and so with that public domain, like the composition itself is not under copyright anymore, but particular recordings of it may be. So, for example, I did a cover. Piano Peka did a cover of Eric Satier's Gymnopédie. So I'm pretty sure that was. I don't actually. I probably should research that before I lie to you. Let me just find out if I'm aware of when that was published. When was this published? 1888. That would definitely be before, that limit. So that's in the public domain. But you see how there's recordings of this song? There's recordings in 1990, 1992, etc. So you couldn't use these specific recordings because that would be copyrighted. But doing a cover of it, there's no need. There should be no content ID claim, and you should definitely dispute that because that's in the public domain. You're not, unless you're using these like specific recordings or other specific recordings, then you might be infringing on their specific recording, but you're not infringing on the, Satie's copyright on the composition because it's in public domain. Let me keep on going. What if I change the song at some point? So if whenever you do a cover, the argument is that there's enough about the original song that, it's descript. Like if I do a cover of a song and I use that as the name, then I'm intending for it to be similar enough to the original that people would recognize that. And so I'm still using that composition even if I've changed it. So that still counts as using the composition. If you change the song so much that it is not recognizable, it doesn't share the melody, the harmony, anything like that, then I don't see how you would call it a cover anymore. It would just be an original work. But if there's any part that's from that original, then you probably have some copyright issue. Now, there are some things like fair use where, is it a transformative work? But my belief is that by its nature, for a cover to be a cover, that your listeners will recognize it as a cover of another song, then it can't be transformational. It's going to be, a derivative work, and that derivative work is something that where you get into potential issues with copyright. Let's see. So Piano Game Night says, asking because most, if not all of my videos are from piano collection books and I haven't been copyright claimed yet. So as Tuba Hero 37 has said, if you don't share the actual sheet music from the book, you're probably playing out of a book, even if it's a modern copyrighted song. So I want to kind of talk about that in a few different ways. So the sheet music itself has its own copyright. So like, yeah, definitely like reposting the sheet music, that could be an issue. Although the sheet music probably isn't in Content ID, so it's probably not going to be automatic. And this is another thing, like lyrics. When people do lyrics in their videos and they repost the lyrics, lyrics are copyrighted to someone else. So you may have the rights to post this cover, but you may not have the rights to post the lyrics in the description. You know what I mean? But that's not in Content ID, so you probably won't get in trouble for that. Playing the song, if it's in Content ID, you could potentially get that claim if it's in Content ID. If it's not in Content ID, then nothing's going to happen. Same with the video game music. All those video game covers absolutely are using the copyright of the video game music. But since it's not in Content ID, there's no Content ID match. And since the video game music composers and the studios and whatnot aren't manually doing DMCA takedown notices, other than, I guess, Nintendo, like nothing really happens. My band directors photocopying sheet music. Let me tell you something about this. One of the things for fair use is using it in an educational context. But let me tell you, educational context means, my understanding is that means something very different than how most band directors use it for. Educational context is like if you wanted to do like if you were in a music theory class and you wanted to like analyze a piece of music, to understand like how it fits some sort of music theory context, that could potentially be fair use. But if you say, "Oh, I just want my class to have this to perform," they should be paying for every copy. Uh, Even though, yeah, it's a photocopy of a copy of a copy of a copy. Um, Technically, that is copyright infringement. But again, it's a small time ban. No one's gonna be going after them, so nothing really happens with that. Any other question? What about a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy that is copied? So again, this is actually kind of interesting. There is something in the how does this go? There's something in the copyright law, and I'm not sure if I'm gonna remember the right context of this, where um, if you had a case for fair use, that case for fair use can be destroyed if you acquired the copyrighted work in a bad way. So, like, let's say you absolutely have a case for fair use. Like, you are allowed to use this. You are allowed to, it's like educational, it's for critique, whatever, but you pirated it, or you got it from someone who pirated it, or someone copied it. No good, because you know, or you should have known that that wasn't a legitimate source. You're in a bad zone. You're in the sunken place there. So that would be bad. I do not actually, hold on. Let me Google. I don't think I recognize that name, but maybe I do. The law firm of Leonard J. French. Maybe this is someone I should know. Is this like the? Is this like the real life name of the video game copyright lawyer guy? No, this isn't. The who is the YouTube copyright lawyer guy? Yeah, he's probably YouTube copyright lawyer. Yes, I do. I just didn't know that was him. I have seen this. Yes, I actually did. I just didn't know. Okay, yeah, I do know. I was like, who's the YouTube copyright guy? Yeah, that is him. Oh, but the video game lawyer guy is Morrison or Lee, that firm. Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna definitely have to keep all of my YouTube copyright people straight, because it's very important to have accurate information from people who are lawyers, which I'm not a lawyer. So I'm just a tax accountant pretending that just because I read the tax code that I know law. But you can't rely on anything that I say for any official purposes of avoiding penalties or etc. YouTubeCopyrightGuy.com. So let me I'm sure that it's going to send me to something copyrightguy.com. Why did I think that would be legit? YouTube. Why did I think? I fell for Ninja Red in my first stream, and I've fallen for it again. Someone should definitely get the domain YouTubeCopyrightGuy.com. I'm just going to say that. Let me see if there's any other. Speaking of original music, Subversive, have you made any music for games? You would be so dope. Actually composing music is difficult, and composing music for video games is difficult. And I have major props to actual composers. But someone asked me, actually, it was like an indie game developer, if I would help compose the soundtrack for their, like it was like a noir game, and I was like, nope, sorry. But if you find out someone who can do it, I'll record sax for it. Like, so that was interesting. I'm gonna buy YouTubeTaxGuy.com. How about that? One of these days, I need to do a live stream on don't make fun of my pronunciation. Noir. Yeah. If Pajama Pants is still listening to this or watching this, she would just die, because she already thinks that my pronunciation of things is suspect. So if she saw me butchering the French language, it You've just not be funny. There will be no foot fetish game. I probably should also register dabsforehead.com. Okay, so if there are no more serious questions, then I think that I am going to wrap this up pretty soon. Let me see if there's anything else that I wanted to address. Let me just go ahead and send this very important message that I need to send. Pajama pants. You missed me butcher the French language multiple times on stream. Yeah, I think that's important to let people know what they missed. There are no dumb questions. I mean, there are dumb questions, but on my stream, as long as I'm getting additional comments for every time people comment, there are no dumb questions. There are questions I might not answer, but there are no dumb questions. Okay, so then everyone, thanks for watching. I'm gonna end this because people are gonna like watch this and they're gonna be like, this guy's not serious. He's not really serious about doing this. He's wasting my time. So I'm gonna end this now, and then tell your friends they need to know about copyright. They can either get their copyright advice from a legit lawyer, or they can watch this video and get it from me. That's their choice. Thanks. Bye.